I think it's important that we share, that we communicate, that we are open, and we grow together to achieve.
Because we are the voice of what wellness is about, and it's up to us to spread the message.
Hello to you all and welcome to South Africa. We are delighted to be part of this event and to bring you some insights from this part of the world. I'd like to thank Biologique Research and Lemmy for their support, and of course you for listening in. One major house rule, the important one, is that please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen if you have any questions for the panelists. And obviously, there is the chat box as well that you are more than welcome to use. We will have 4 panelists today, and I'd like to welcome the first one, Tanya Lopez from the Saxon Hotel. She's the manager there, based in Joburg. We also have Debbie Mergen, who is the CEO of the Camelot Group, a group of spas here in the African continent. Taryn Lilly, who is the spa manager at the Cape Grace Hotel in Cape Town. And of course, John Lambro, last but not least, who is the director of the Life Day Spa Group again in Cape Town. I'm Phil Woods from Professional Beauty South Africa. We're talking about life after lockdown, whenever that may happen. I know in some parts of the world it is happening, but we don't know when it's going to be happening over here. I'd like to ask maybe first Taryn Lilly to talk to us. She has been looking very much at the tourist sector. Cape Town obviously is a great tourist destination, beautiful city. And this lockdown is obviously having a huge impact on tourism and obviously again, the spa industry. So over to you, Taryn. Maybe you can give us some insights of what you're thinking.
Indeed. Thank you, Phil, and thank you for having me here today. So as Phil mentioned, obviously with the majority of my experience being in hotel spas, I'm going to address the topic of life after lockdown more from the hospitality tourism industry. A reality check is that COVID-19 really is going to leave the hotel industry badly bruised. I think there's general agreement that the industry is not going to be the same for long after the lockdown and travel restrictions have even been lifted. That being said, we can't afford to follow the existing model of operations that we currently have in place. So hotels and spas really need to adapt to survival strategies now, and then we need to make plans going forward to change their business strategies. I've been following a couple of articles and I just want to share a couple of stats with you first. A survey released by the World Travel and Tourism Council in conjunction with the Department of Tourism shows that 83% of businesses that responded said revenues for March this year were already down by 50% from last year, and 1 in 3 businesses had their revenue sitting at 0. A large majority of respondents expect the impact of the lockdown to go on at least for another 4 to 12 months after reopening. Another survey by Cape Town Tourism found that 56% of tourism business surveyed do not have a recovery plan in place. And obviously this can lead to a lot of job losses. And about 83% of businesses indicated that they would not survive longer than 6 months under the current restrictions. Now, the general consensus from the Minister of Tourism is that South Africa's domestic tourism will really only likely start in December this year, with international travel really only picking up from next year. And it does sound a little bit bleak, but it does provide us a perspective of really what everybody's going through and what we have to address. So one of my favorite quotes is, "This too shall pass." It might pass like a kidney stone, but it will pass. And so the silver lining here is that people will travel eventually. So we just need to make sure that we really are prepared for them. And one positive aspect that we are finding is that many properties are saying that the travelers are postponing their trips, not cancelling. So that's really encouraging for our industry. So looking at this and looking at lives after lockdown, I kind of divided into two areas that I really want to focus on. The first being staff well-being, and the second just being your guests and your guest experience. So I'm going to start just a little bit about staff. So firstly, new updated SOPs are essential. We've heard a lot about this, temperature checks on arrivals, masks, uniforms, cleaning protocols. It's imperative. The industry's done an amazing job at putting these protocols and resources together, so I'm not going to go into too much on that, but just make sure that that is prepared and ready. Provide a safe working environment for your team and for your business architecturally. I know Debbie is going to talk a little bit more about that a bit later, but really just make sure your space is safe and ready before you open. I think take time before you open to apply full training for your team. You know, new protocols. It's almost like opening a new business when we do get into life after lockdown. Really make sure that training is there, especially if you're going to have new offerings like virtual consultations. Not all of us are tech savvy. Therapists might struggle, so really focus on training. And I think also initially it's going to be good to look at shifts and team shifts of when you bring your staff back to work. And this will help with obviously applying social distancing practices. A very valid point was raised. I was in a webinar yesterday where somebody, you know, mentioned that this technique could actually really help with the containment process if a virus outbreak does happen in your business. And it was a bit of an eye-opener for me, because we actually need to be mindful that when we do open up, it doesn't mean the virus is gone. So these strategies really are so key to have in place to prevent anything from happening going forward. But I think most importantly, when thinking about staff, if you haven't got this already, get it in your business, is a detailed employee wellness program. We really need to address issues like anxiety with our staff, personal financial management. We really need to just be able to build confidence and offer support to our team, and having that for them in an employee wellness program is imperative. As much as we want our guests to feel safe in our space, obviously our team needs it too, and you can't do that with a bunch of terrified therapists running around. So really focus on your employee wellness programs. And they need to know how to handle situations confidently. So that is key. Some areas, and I know we've done a lot of, is life coaching. So life coaching sessions for your team is a great way to invest in their development. I think also what's really important with staff is keeping your communication lines open. So keep the channels open, assess your business every day. Look at, we don't know what to expect. We need to be equipped. We need to be able to pivot and change our strategies if things don't work. But communicating with your team and making sure they're on point all the time is definitely going to be key. And all this investment in your staff is really just going to empower them. It's going to empower them to educate the community on wellness, and really let them step up as professionals. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later, but you know, promoting the 5 pillars of wellness is really key, and it's a trend that was huge before COVID, and it's definitely going to be a huge trend, I think, after the lockdown period. So what I did was I kind of wanted to look, so you know, we focused on staff, but I wanted to see what is it going to look like? What are hotels doing? That are open? What are hotels planning to do? You know, I think it was quite scary. Everything that I know about hospitality, I think is going to change, and it's really difficult to kind of, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's really something that we need to be realistic about and actually understand. So a lot of the hotels are limiting their occupancies going forward to like 30–40%, looking at a lot of technology like electrostatic spraying technology, fogging machines for public areas, UV technology to disinfect high-touch areas. I mean, in the rooms, the telephones, you know, desks everywhere. There's a lot of high-touch points throughout the hotels. But what's interesting is a lot of hotels are obviously looking at the tech side of things. Using your cell phones for check-ins or for room access to the guest rooms, creating apps that guests can use for a concierge service instead of, you know, picking up the phone as a butler service. Really a lot of technical information and a lot of tech out there, putting up screens, moving furniture to be able to, you know, create a space that involves social distancing. And it's really not what we're used to normally at the moment in hotels. Something like food safety obviously is going to be key in your restaurants. But what was interesting when I was looking at all of these procedures, and it sounds a bit crazy, but some businesses are actually even looking at creating specific times that guests can go down for breakfast, allocating a specific table throughout their stay. And the same can be applied to the spas, as by the pool, is allocating a specific sun lounger and a time that the guests can now spend at the pool. And the same for the spa, creating unique spaces for them. And it's quite scary, but those are things that we need to think about when looking at social distancing. So it really just kind of brought me to the realization that going forward with all these changes and with all these scary, staff walking around in masks and gloves, and it's quite a scary picture for a guest that wants to come and relax and just, spend time with you. So we really need to focus on guests and the guest-centric focus of your business and what you do with that. So looking at that, I just kind of put together a couple of ideas of how we can do that and how we can really enhance our guest experience. But now more than ever, we need to add value. So value to their experiences and really create an authentic journey for them. Be abundantly generous with what you give. I think looking, obviously, as I said, with tourism, is that it's going to start with local travel, the domestic market. I think there's a lot that we can do with the domestics. Focus on, I think there's going to be a need for support to grow our local economy. So definitely, wherever possible, local branding, local businesses, support sustainability. It's going to be a big thing. This need to kind of uplift us again as a country is going to be huge. So that will be a focus in the beginning. There's been a lot of, I've seen talk about adding fees like COVID fees or surcharge to your services. I mean, this is quite debatable, and I'm just going to give you my opinion. I feel with our pricing, I wouldn't discount at all, but I also wouldn't really add anything. I think as a hotel, you can absorb a lot of those costs, and it really boils down to the value that you're adding to your guests. But that's obviously a personal decision that can be chatted about and debated in your teams. I think the focus on personal experiences, like I said, looking at the spa, how do you create a memory? Looking at your treatment room, giving the guests their choice of their music to customize. Customizing linen. How amazing would it be to walk into the spa, have your locker, or even if it's just the treatment room, all prepared and sanitized, ready for you with your name embroidered in your robe or embroidered in the towel, waiting for you as your private space. I mean, that would just make me feel amazing. Looking at, I know a lot of our spas are having to take away the buffets now because we can't have a big health buffet, but that doesn't mean you can't present a guest with a green juice or a smoothie or a lovely health platter after their treatment. So there's really different ways of working around this. Personalizing room drops, pillow talkers, linking the guest to the spa. One thing that I know hotels do really well, I know ours does, is an amazing welcome back gifting program. I think the spas can learn from this. We're used to spoiling guests on their birthday or anniversary, but there's nothing wrong with giving them a surprise gift at the end of their treatment or on arrival, just to say thank you and just to spoil them. And that really would start to make them feel special. So I think there's a lot of programs that we can look at to do that and to enhance guest personal experience. I think it's just really about being innovative and working within your own space. We need to, most importantly, manage our guest expectations, and we need to communicate with them, be transparent and engage with them, but also stay curious. I think it's important to, when you engage, do surveys, find out what they want, but actually listen. I know a lot of us send out these MailChimp surveys, but you need to listen to what they want, and then we can create these safe havens and homes for them to call home, away from home, when they do come. So what COVID has actually done, it's really given people time. It's given people time to learn, to research, to be mindful, and really to start to prioritize wellness in their lives. I know it's done that for me as well. And it's a huge opportunity for spas as an offering. So I'm just going to, I know I don't have much time, but I'm going to briefly go through just an offering that we can do for wellness. It's really a great opportunity. Revamp your treatment menu. You can't go back to what you've been doing. Really revamp it. Look at things like virtual consultations. Look at things like workshops, couples teach massage workshops, how to make a wellness smoothie, how to make an immune booster cocktail, or look at culinary classes, how to create a healthy local dish. There's a lot that we can really do to engage the guests. A lot of focus on immunity, immune boosting, breath work sessions, oxygen treatments. There's so much that you can do. It's really amazing. But you don't have to wait until we open. These are all things that you can do now. You can start engaging with your guests. There's amazing platforms. I'm just going to throw it out there. There's a new website was just launched for worldwellnessweekend.org, and there's phenomenal content there on how, you know, different blogs and different things that you can share with your guests, and join in events like that and really create your virtual yoga sessions, or, you know, really have things that the guests can see, oh, that's amazing. So I can join in on a global event and I don't even need to be in a spa to do that. But I will go when the spa opens again because they've got my well-being at heart. So those are really exciting things that you can do. I think self-care seminars, and that is really also something that's important, and that will really be something that will guests will be involved in. So, I mean, those are, I know my time is limited and I think I've kind of gone through everything. Sorry, Phil, I always kind of ramble on. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's really just about the guest experience. There's so much that you can do. Just be creative, be innovative, and just stay on it, and you'll be fine. Thanks.
There you go. Awesome.
Thanks.
I do think that you know, the scary thing is, I think Jean-Guy put in the chat, is that the opening in December, you know, is a crazy time for us. John, did you want to add something? You were... No. Okay, good. We'll get to your other question, Jean-Guy, in a minute. But thank you, Taryn, for that. That was very interesting. I'd now like to ask Debbie to talk to us. She, as Taryn alluded to, is very much interested in the design of spas going forward, and possibly any redesigns that might have to take place now. So without further ado, over to you, Debbie. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil, and hi, everyone. It's so great to be connecting with you today and just sharing post-COVID what we're all going to be doing. So obviously, we've all been focusing on our SOPs and how the spas should be when we get back, ensuring that they're safe. But I wanted to focus more on the decor concept, and more the concept of actually saving the souls of our spas. Because if you think about it, when people came in the past to our spas, it really was all about luxury, experience, texture, smell. And now that we're having to sterilize and make everything so hygienic, it's really important that we don't lose that soul of our spas. But yet there are key elements that we need to take into account, considering the mindfulness and how our clients are going to feel. So there's a lot about really concentrating on the high touch areas. And if you think about it, there's many high touch points in our spas. So I think there's a great opportunity now for AI and cell phone apps to come into being that will really help us along in that route. So for example, door openers, sensor door openers, so clients don't have to touch the doors when they come to reception. All bookings would obviously be made prior, but for example, voice activated phones so that the receptionists don't have to actually keep picking up the phone, touching the phones. Then when they go through into other areas like the locker rooms, lockers could be scanned, you know, so that you don't actually have to plug in a code. So they also scanned, and one can have software that links to your guest cell phone that could open the locker. And there's really a lot of AI coming into being. And I remember, about 2 years ago, doing a speech about what does the future of our industry look like. And I think more now than ever before, are these things going to be coming into being? We're going to be forced into it. So automation of things, using automated answering booking services. So in our spas, it's never going to take away the touch that we actually do when we're doing our treatment. And I think more so ever now that people have been in isolation for so long, do they need to be touched? But if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that bottom pyramid, if it's natural instinct, it's human instinct to want to to be safe and to feel safe. And it's our need, our responsibility to ensure that that bottom foundation level the triangle of Maslow's hierarchy needs is that we make our guests feel safe, and therefore that trust and that openness and that ability to engage with us will follow suit. There are a lot of different things we also need to look at, and firstly, in our spas, air quality. That's something that a lot of big companies are also looking at. So looking at the HVAC systems and seeing, can one reduce the humidity levels to 40 to 60%? If you have that ability, great. If you don't have that ability, then to run humidifiers throughout the spa, increasing that percentage, because that 40 to 60% is going to inhibit further bacterial infection. Then there's things like our decor. Now, prior to COVID, a lot of us had decor that was really beautiful and over the top, and that might have incorporated wall paneling, fabric wall paneling. It might have incorporated shaggy carpets and lots of cushion covers. And now we're going to have to look at those spaces and actually realize that we need to not only just clean those spaces, because cleaning doesn't get rid of antiviruses and bacteria, but literally that those surfaces are going to need either bleach or otherwise a 70% alcohol to clean them. Now, I know a lot of our fabrics in our spas, can't tolerate that, velvets, that kind of thing. So I think one is going to have to look immediately at your furnishings and at your decor and say, okay, am I going to replace it with leather and metal that's easy cleanable, and am I going to get cushion covers made that I can replace them every day, wash them and then replace them. So I have a few covers. But I think these are the things that are going to make guests feel more comfortable, and you can reassure them and tell them that this is what you're doing. But the trend is furnishings that have pleats and ribbing and, is a no-go. It's really not good. And then we also don't want to go overboard in creating, for example, screens where they make the clients not feel comfortable. So our whole intention is creating a we space to a me space, creating space distancing between our clients, but not making them feel isolated. And one can really do that cleverly with decor. You can have beautiful screens, you could have plant screens, manicure, pedicure areas, which used to be great communal areas. You can't now put people in a row 1 meter apart of them. So now you have to cleverly think, how can you turn those mani-pedi areas and relaxation areas, into areas where the guests will still feel comfortable, still be happy having their treatment, but still having a sense of people around them, but yet protecting them. And that's going to be very important. In South Africa, we're really fortunate that we have great weather, and we could create a lot of outdoor treatments where there is a lot of space where it's just an outdoor treatment setup that's very hygienic, and won't make, because I think people in very secluded, very contained areas might feel uncomfortable. So where you're out in a more open area, I think our clients are going to feel a lot more comfortable. So that's really from a decor perspective that I think we really do need to look at our spas. Remember that ambience and that soul of our spas is what attracts our clients. And then look at all those areas, bearing in mind all these touch points that I mentioned. You might give your client a stylus that she can use rather than using her fingers, although we can't get COVID from our hands, but then obviously the reiteration of washing hands, etc. And again, our therapists, I think a lot of our therapists being in lockdown are going to be quite scared. And I think that emotion and that feeling is going to come across to our guests. And I think it's really important that prior to opening, we spend a lot of time with our therapists and get them confident and all those non-verbal signs, because if they are wearing masks, it's law in South Africa to wear masks, that they're smiling with their eyes. You might create a beautiful ceremony that you bow to the client. But it's about making that client feel special and going over and beyond to make them feel comfortable in our properties.
Yeah, I mean, I particularly like the idea of treatments going on outside. I mean, I've been to 1 or 2 spas in South Africa where I've experienced that, and it is great, you know, you know, it enhances that feeling of being at one with nature and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, it is great. I don't know whether any of the other panelists have got any comments to make on that. It is something that I suppose we're all going to have to look at. But I think the other thing is for me that when you're, as you mentioned, Debbie, it's that thing of not taking the soul out of the whole experience by being so clinical that instead of feeling like you're going to a spa, you're going to a hospital, which you know, is not what we're about, you know, as an industry.
The decor industry is really onto it because, for example, now you can get antimicrobial fabrics, and they almost work to detract viruses, etc. You can clean them 100%. There's a company called Steelwork, international company, already has introduced such a beautiful range of fabrics. So these are things that, you know, we are going to be looking at. Yeah,
sure. One of the questions that we have here is from Guinness. I work with several spas as a spa consultant. What is your guidance for spas with a limited budget? That is probably a very difficult answer to provide, but I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts on that particular topic, briefly.
So I think if you've got a limited budget, you've just got to ensure that all your surfaces and everything can be cleaned. And if they can't be cleaned, then you are going to have to use disposable items, fabrics, throws, that kind of thing to protect. You know, it's quite sad because we went through a process of being environmentally friendly, and now we don't want to lose that. So if we start bringing in disposables and synthetics, you know, we're going to lose the essence of what we stand for. But there are clever ways. I think, you know, one can look at your FF&E and look at the surfaces, ensure they're non-porous. If they are very porous, then see what you can do to put on top of that surface to protect guests. But one does need to look at your decor all the way through, because they've tests been run, and for example, on glass, wood, the virus can stay active for 5 days. So yeah, it's really important. Something that interested me, copper, 4 hours. 4 hours copper. So sure, I think we might all have copper spas soon.
Yeah. Kind of expensive, possibly, but okay. Thank you for that. There's another cost question. If we have time, Milan, we'll get to that one. I'm not sure whether it's probably how long is a piece of string, depending on the side of the spa. But maybe thank you for that, Debbie, and we'll move on to Tanya, who is very, very passionate about the protocols, etc., for the reopening, and hopefully we'll expand on some of the things that we've mentioned with Debbie and Taryn so far. Over to you, Tanya.
Thankfully for me, the majority of my spa is copper, so that kind of worked in my favor. But yeah, I can completely understand. It is going to be a challenge. I think guest confidence is probably going to be our biggest challenge. You know, it's a scary world, but from the feedback I've been getting from our guests, they're desperate to be touched. They're desperate for massages. You know, we just keep postponing appointments all the time because we don't have an end date at this stage. So that in that sense, it is reassuring. But for a luxury brand like ours, they do want to know that we are taking every possible precautionary measure to ensure their safety. And unfortunately, that is going to come at a loss, because at the moment, thankfully, as a spa within a hotel, we don't rely 70% of our client base is our local market, and it's Joburg local. So we don't necessarily rely on the hotel business should that not pick up. We're kind of hoping that we will be allowed to be opened earlier, but at the moment we're still level 1, and no one knows when that might be. So yes, going back to guest confidence, I think that's going to be key. Minimizing, so from our perspective, we're probably looking at, in terms of our room potential, only using 50% capacity at a time, so that we can also control the amount of guests through the space. We will also, I'm spending a lot of time with my therapist at the moment, doing little mini online free courses, which you can get on the differences between sanitization and sterilization. I know this is stuff they probably learned at college, but we need to go down back to basics in that sense. We are also going to be very transparent in terms of our COVID policy. So in our, I encourage people to work with their booking systems, whatever the technology that they use. We operate with a system called Book for Time, which is a Canadian-based system, and it's linked to Opera, so it interfaces with Opera, but they're very interested in working with spas because it's in their best interest to roll these issues out globally. So in essence, we've a confirmation, and guests would normally receive a confirmation, and in that confirmation is a link, for example, to a medical questionnaire. In the past, the medical questionnaire would only be filled out online every so often, every 6 months, and if anything changes, and it's automatically linked to their profile. I have now asked them to change it to be linked to their appointment time, so they will need to fill out a consultation card with COVID-based questions linked to the appointment number. So automatically we've created a tracing system without actually having to do anything or pay anything more, if that makes sense. So we found that as quite useful. Obviously the therapists are going to have to get also strict with checking what the guest has said, possibly speaking to the guest and discussing the guest's needs prior to arrival. I think rethinking the guest journey is also paramount, because in essence, this is going to be a very clinical process right throughout. I think we are going to be expected to take the guest temperatures as well on arrival, as well as screening our staff and keeping all those information. So it's a huge task. But I think being open with the guest and discussing it with the guests is for their safety. If they feel that there's consistency with the team, that we're all doing the same thing, and that we are taking all possible measures, then people have asked, do you not think it's a bit invasive? Unfortunately, we don't really have an option, and it's for everybody's safety. It's for the staff safety, it's for the guest safety, it's for future guest safety as well. So we need to take all of that into account. I think the role of the front desk is going to be 10 times harder than what it's ever been, because the booking process is going to be a lot longer in the explanation of the guest journey and what they can expect on arrival when they come in, what they expected to do prior to arrival. That sort of thing is going to be key in their journey. So then the question is, how do we change this whole medical, very clinical style that we now have to implement it back to the luxury spa that we're all used to? From our perspective, we obviously going to be using our rooms as more niche rooms. So instead of moving the guests around the spa and different areas too much, we're going to try and keep the guest as much as possible in the room. And as Taryn said earlier, the idea of allocating a definitive time for them to use things like spa facilities. I was listening to one of the webinars earlier this week from Dr. Mark Cohen, You know, and it's quite reassuring, and I've shared it with my team as well. It's quite reassuring that, you know, guests must know that viruses cannot survive in steam rooms and saunas, and it's actually advisable for respiratory, you know, for respiratory health and boosting your immune system. So our therapists are going to have to become educators as well, educators in wellness, how to create your spa experience at home and take a little bit of that element home with them, is also going to be key. We also thinking of our touch points, as Taryn said as well, very much using, once we've done all the sort of very physical, okay, we're washing our hands now, which is required, you know, as an LQA anyway, but now more so than ever, you know, washing the hands and the whole sterilization, is to then, once they're on the bed, take them out of that experience into a different journey, using sight or using smell and sound. We planning on changing our welcome journey to include mindfulness techniques, so we can take a few minutes to take away from the stress. Yes, we will be losing money because in essence, you know, we can't turn around the treatment as quick as we did, and we might have to allocate it, you know, a little bit of additional time for sanitizing, sterilizing, but also to spend with the client, with the guest, to make them feel comfortable and to welcome them back. And we also intend on sending a little gift home with them, which is a little pot of the Saxon, which they can enjoy in the comfort of their own home. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm muting myself. Yeah, it's I mean, the whole process, I think, is still also very much a suck it and see, in that we don't know exactly what conditions the government are going to impose on us either.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know what's going on in South Africa, we have a particularly harsh lockdown in many ways. And we are now going, as Tanya mentioned, we have different levels. Level 1 being the one that spas, salons, etc., will be able to operate in at this current time. We are currently in level 4. So we might or might not have a long way to go yet. The rumor is we're going to level 3 at the end of the month. So it could be a long time yet before we know exactly what conditions the government will be applying. And hopefully they're listening to this podcast and they are listening to what we have to say and taking note.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one thing actually that I heard, sure. And it actually reminded me of when I worked in the UK. So I worked for the Sanctuary, which used to be in Covent Garden, and it was a particularly big building. And a challenge as management, it was at the time, you know, we had approximately 900 guests, day guests. It was a day spa, so we had 900 guests a day. So how do you move these people around the building without making them feel like they're all on top of each other? And that actually got me thinking that because we may not be able to use things like conferencing for a very long time, so within the hotel we've got massive conferencing facilities which will be underused, is perhaps using these as wellness space. So, you know, changing our packages in a sense. The challenge is that, you know, we also don't want to throw millions of brochures away at this stage because, you know, printing, we don't want the printing costs, etc. But perhaps adding things like, as part of the guest journey, spend a little bit of time in the facilities, and then have, you know, change a conference center into, you know, mindfulness spaces or meditation spaces where we can do a meditation class or sound therapy session, as Taryn says, as little value adds. Because from both Taryn and I, and I'm sure Taryn feels the same, is we don't want to drop our prices because we have a brand to uphold, but we need to create that value within the space.
Indeed, you do. Yes. One of the questions we've got is about engaging with more local residents. Obviously, Tanya, you are doing that. It's a 70% local occupancy in your spa. was there any particular motivation you had in acquiring that sort of population? I'm sure that I think Taryn also, you have a reasonably good local population of guests. Is
Yeah,
that
well,
right?
ours is not as good as I think it is in as at the Saxon. So our majority, I think we're looking at maybe a 60-40, closer to 70-40, 70%. Our focus really has always been more on in-house guests. But we
Sure.
obviously, there's a lot of work that we're doing behind the scenes to improve our local following, definitely.
Yeah. And obviously, John, I think you've got one spa in Cape Town at a hotel and the other that's separate from a hotel. So do you have a significant local clientele in the hotel spa at Crystal Sands?
Good afternoon. Hello to
Yeah,
everyone.
good afternoon.
I think, Phil, our vision from when we started the hotel spa was to focus on the locals because we didn't want the seasonal fluctuations. And so we've been very successful in doing that. So I would say 95% of our income comes from local guests and only 5% from hotel guests. But it's also because of the type of hotel we're in. It's more conferencing corporate hotel than it is a leisure hotel. So also a different type of profile guest than possibly the Saxon or the Cape Grace. But we had from the beginning the aim to target locals. So that's where we've always focused.
Awesome. Yeah, good. Okay, well, we might as well now move on to you and what you wanted to talk to us about, which is very much on post-lockdown, and you've given a lot of thought onto things like reassuring clients, etc. So please give us a little bit of an insight.
Okay, good. Good afternoon. So I think the way we're looking at lockdown is in 2 timelines, because I think there's going to be the short-term timeline and then there's the longer term. So short term, the first 3 months post-lockdown, and I want to look at the 2 scenarios separately and approach it and look at it across 5 topics. So short term, what's our client's mindset going to be? I think it's going to be, yay, I'm free, get me to a salon. And I think they're going to rush back. I think we're going to have a storm. We must be out there to catch the raindrops. And I want to look good again. I want to feel good again. So I think all the research that I'm listening to, there's going to be a definite storm coming our way, which is good. I think this type of treatments that we're going to look at will be a lot of waxing, nails, limited facials and massage, I think, initially. So we have to gear our spa to do that. So some of the treatment rooms might now be mani-pedi stations as opposed to massage or facial areas. But yeah, I think that we're going to get a lot more of the beauty type treatments. What would be important to clients? I think they're going to be watching our hygiene like a hawk. And there was an interesting question earlier. I mean, all these ideas are great, but there is a budget, and we can't go and redo the whole spa and replace all our material, change our couches. It's just not practical. So we must do as much as we can in all our environments. There's basics and then there's advanced stuff. And we're asking our clients, we've sent out a survey to say, these are the steps that we're doing. What else can we do to make you feel safe? And I wish I had those results for you, because I think we've got 500 responses and it's running for another week. And then we'll be able to put it into some form of document to say, okay, this is what our clients want to see. But in the beginning, they're going to be watching everything. So we can't slip up there at all. And it's going to be a bit of a weird situation. I don't know if anyone else has felt it, but we're a touchy-feely industry, and we're, as human beings, we crave interaction, and we're told to keep the social distance. So you're going to come into the spa, and the receptionist is going to be behind the screen and behind a mask. It's going to be an interesting dynamic that happens, but our clients will crave, I think, human interaction. So that takes me on to the next thing, which is the impact on your therapist, because now the therapists are going to be their sounding boards. A lot of people in depression, a lot of people are highly stressed. How are therapists trained to deal with that? So the therapists will have 2 things to deal with. One is they're also going to be scared to be doing treatments. So we need to make sure that they're protected. But 2, they need to be able to counsel their clients. So are we helping them do that? Are we giving them the tools? And I think people are going to want to talk. They're going to want to be social. So keeping them distance from each other in our nail bars, and it's going to be tricky, but we're going to have to manage that process carefully. So your hostesses will need to be on the floor, making sure that that distancing is still happening. From a marketing perspective, I think good deals. A lot of people haven't been working. They're going to look for good deals, easy access. They want to drive in, get their treatment, go. I think our availability will change. In other words, because now we have to distance. So when before we could see 20 clients at the same time, we're now going to only be able to see half that if we're lucky. So we may have to extend our working hours so that we can accommodate more people. And then I think what's important for now to catch this storm that's about to hit, this good storm, is how did you stay in touch with your clients now? Are you helping them now? What are you talking to them today? Because those are the clients, the companies they will remember when everything opens up. So that's my short-term view. I think longer term, what is the client's mindset going to be? I think there's going to be this thing of, I'm not going to be frivolous with my money. I want to be more careful with my spend, and I'm going to spend on the things that I need rather than the things that I want. And I want good value for money, not cheap necessarily, but I want value for money. So why this is very important, I'm going to touch on that a little bit more, want versus need. So I think that's the client's mindset. The services, I think they're going to want simplified services. I think our menus are going to change. I do think that we're going to have to incorporate different things into our services. Someone mentioned mindfulness, meditation. There was something on Professional Beauty the other day about that incorporating into your treatments. I think that's going to become important. And then another thing is, you know, we're going to have to, if we think retail, we've typically only stocked skincare and a little bits and pieces on the side. But now I think our retail offering is going to have to include things. We've recently introduced CBD oils, CBD droplets, also supplements, vitamins. We've had that in the spa before and it never took off, but I think there will be a focus on that going forward. What's going to be important to clients at hygiene and safety is always going to be there. But you know what, guys, we are a health and safety place. We've always been used to this stuff. And yes, we're taking it up another level, but it's not surprise. We've done this, we can do it. And I think our clients know that. And I do think that we will be a place for human connection, because there will be very few places where you can reach out and touch, so to speak. And there will be a craving for that. Impact on the therapist long term, I think our clients are going to be more demanding. They want to know why I'm doing this treatment, how does it affect me, how does it impact my stress, my immunity, and all those things. I think our therapists need to be more educated on that front. They need knowledge of supplements. And I also think there's going to be very limited room for error. Clients are going to watch their pennies and are going to demand a lot. So we're going to have to up our game. I mean, now we're asked to do thousands more things in terms of hygiene, but so it's going to be hard. Spray this, do this, don't turn around, make this happen, wash this, blah. It's tough. And I think that we're going to have to spend some time on training our therapists so that there's no room for error. And then this is the part that I think as an industry, we need to possibly focus on. Because I do believe that if the spa industry is going to thrive, thrive going forward, we need to change or possibly enhance for some companies where we sit in the consumer's mind, because there's a thing called share of wallet, right? So there's X amount in someone's wallet, where they're going to spend it. And going back to the initial top point of want versus need, we can't be in the want, the frivolous, if I've got spare money. We've got to go down the Maslow's hierarchy, which Debbie mentioned earlier, into the I need this category, because if and this now speaks into our marketing. I think the days where we keep talking about pamper, spoil, special occasion, that's going to appeal to a far smaller market. I think if we want to keep our customers and, more importantly, grow our customer base, we will need to reposition ourselves to being more of a, let's say, this is a place for de-stress, boost your immunity, look good, age well. We need to talk about self-care. We need to talk about be kind to yourself. So our marketing material going forward, I think, should have less of those spoil, pamper, and more, this is something that you need to do. It's going to become a need in your life as opposed to a want. And I think as an industry, we need to tell people this, because we talk about wellness and we actually do it. But I just think that the consumer hasn't quite clicked onto, especially in the spa game, oh, it's actually very good for me. You know, you got your regulars who believe that, but I think we need to take the industry and say, listen, this is not a nice to have spoil pamper. This is a self-care must have. And that is kind of where we're going to focus our business into the future.
Okay. And with regard to wellness, both you and Tanya talked about this. And we've got a question from Yolanda asking for a bit more elaboration with Tanya on the welcome ritual. And perhaps, I don't know, John, maybe you could follow on with just a couple of thoughts on where you actually think the wellness thing will be going, you know, how you will actually manifest itself. Over to you, Tanya, first.
So by chance, actually, we were working on a new signature treatment just prior to COVID, which was a digital detox signature treatment, and it involved a mindfulness journey. So we've decided to not release that just yet at the moment, and to take elements of that mindfulness journey. So typically our welcome ritual involved a washing of the feet. We haven't quite decided if we're going to still do that or not. It may still be a possibility, but we feel that if you were to start a massage, or if you were to start a facial, that just starting isn't going to be enough. And by doing the mindfulness techniques that we've learned through a mindfulness expert, and it's really, when we talk about mindfulness, it's about being conscious of breath, you know, taking a moment to relax. We'll use aromatherapy oils as well within the room to really inhale in, and then visualizing different things, visualizing you know, taking the energy to your toes, taking your energy to your sternum, taking your energy to your heart, and just taking that few moments just to really relax them and get them ready to actually start the treatment without just sort of going straight into it. And that's what we talk about with mindfulness, and taking them out of that. So that takes away from the whole clinical side, we're hoping, and just gets them completely unwind, to take a moment to stop.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Yeah, I hope so. Sorry, John.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I think, you know, there's a lot of material out there on wellness, and I'm thinking a lot of the people that are on this chat will be doing things in their spas already. I think my point is we need to be positioning ourselves there in the minds of the consumer. So when you talk about your services and you're speaking to your clients, and you clients, you're saying, we're a wellness place, we're not a spoil place. We massage is, it's not a nice feeling, it's actually doing things that boost your immunity. I think it's the verbiage that we're using and how we're telling clients what we do that's important. Because every spa will have their own wellness tips, tricks, things that they do, but are we communicating this sufficiently to our customers and to potentially new customers, a whole market that's never come to us before?
Okay, cool. One of the things that I've been thinking about was, which nobody I don't think has mentioned, in a lot of spas, they offer couples treatments. Is that going to be a thing of the past? Any thoughts, anybody?
I think there'll still be couples treatments, because if you're in lockdown with your partner, you're comfortable about your partner. So I think spas might even open up to, for example, like a group of friends, people who are close, who know where they've been and are comfortable with those people, rather than a group of strangers. So one could still have the distancing, but keeping them together, getting that feeling of still having joint celebrations or couple celebrations. So I think we can really still do it, but I think it's about who you're comfortable being next to. If you don't know that person next to you and they're close to you, you're not going to feel happy. But whereby, you know, if you're going to go in with your husband, your partner, friend, you know that person, you automatically feel comfortable next to that person.
Totally.
You know their hygiene, where they've been. So I really don't think that will fall away. I think that will remain. I think the challenge for us is just to track people in a spa. So the usage, where people are going, their apps that do that. So for example, if somebody's in a room, maybe another room's kept free so that you can, you know, rotate people when you're doing the hygiene, just so that you can really track where people are in your spa. So you don't have high areas of people or people passing each other in a passage, or think about when guests have to come up in a lift to you. You don't want 4 or 5 people in a lift all standing together. So these are all the things that you're going to have to track, and you're going to have that mechanism in place for your spas.
Anybody wants to add to that? I mean, for me, I was not so much thinking of the couples themselves, but the therapists, the number of therapists in the room, etc. And, you know, whether you'd have to use bigger rooms to keep the beds further apart, or I don't know, you know, that was more where I was looking at it from.
Well, if I can say something on that as well, I think most couple rooms that we have available are quite big, and they're quite spaced out, and you know, they do provide that space. So I don't think it's really going to be too much of a concern. But like Debbie said, it's really about tracking the movement. So you know, we need to look at waiting areas. We need to look at what your facilities are like and how people move throughout your space. I think that's going to be a key focus more than the actual room itself. I think the therapist will take the precautions because they would have gone through all the protocols, they would have gone through all the training, but they will take those precautions with their guests. But it's really just about tracking the movement, like Debbie said. I agree.
Okay, cool. I noticed one of the people on the chat has said that they're in Australia. They're organising massage workshops for couples to learn to massage each other, and then they can book the massage room themselves. So that's quite an interesting take from that. We also, Milan from India was asking about costs of tests, etc. And I think over here, I'm not sure that many people are, unless they feel they've got the virus, are going for testing at this time. And I'm not actually aware of how much a test cost, but is that something that you feel you're going to do to get all your staff tested before you open up?
Can I? Okay, I'll go first. I think the difference in South Africa is that we focus on screening and then testing. So based on the outcomes of the screening, are you deemed to go for further testing? So I think a lot of countries it's different, where it's just they don't have the screening process and they're automatically going to the testing stage. So for us, we need to screen our staff on a daily basis. So that means asking them a series of questions. There is quite a lot of software coming out, because from my point of view, I'm like, oh my God, papers get lost, you know how, because if we are audited by the Department of Health for whatever reason, they're going to want to just see back, you know, that we have got protocols in place and that we have got records in place to say that we are that we are screening on a daily basis. So the screening involves a series of COVID-based questions, and then it also involves a temperature test. I'm hoping as well, with working with Book for Time, that this is an avenue, because every therapist or every staff member has got a profile on the system as well. And if they could possibly link the same sort of view of the medical questionnaire that we had for the guest onto the profile, because ideally we want to cut out the paperwork as much as possible, because that's when things get lost. But yeah, from our side, we screen first, and if there's an alarm or an alert, then it gets referred for testing.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Sorry, Taryn, did you wish to add to that?
No,
quickly?
that's exactly what I was going to say. But I just thought I saw something in the chat here, and I just really would like to kind of add is that when you had your question about, or you were talking about your couples, is someone, I think it's Yolanda suggested that it might be a good idea because the hotel's already going to be at a lower occupancy. Maybe if you're worried about space and your spa is limited, is use maybe hotel rooms as setting up rooms for couples massage. I just thought that might be something to mention. That's a really good suggestion. Sure. So thank you for that. Thanks.
Yeah, no, great. Well, we kind of run out of time now, but thank you all for taking part. Zhongyi has put the World Wellness Weekend website in the chat, but if you can't find that, also just Google it, it will pop up. I'd like to again thank our sponsors, Biologique Research and Lemi. Thank you again to the speakers and to everybody that's listened in, and have a great day from South Africa. Cheers.
Thank you.